What's up, guys? Garrett Chappell here with another 910 Outdoor podcast. I'm sitting here with my co-host, Nate Ramsey, and we got a very special one for you today. So, you know what? Let's talk outdoors.
About to get real.
Golly, Jimmy.
He wasn't about to get out of here.
Let him get nice and low.
Those feathers, bro.
Oh, they don't get as good as fast this morning. And by golly, you're doing it.
Put the smack down, baby.
This just got dirty in a hurry.
This episode is brought to you by Triptych Outdoors, the original bird hunter's multi-tool, with features for both upland and waterfowl hunters. We encourage you to go check out this product at www.thetriptych.com and make sure to use promo code TEAM910 for 20% off of your purchase. What's up, everybody?
Happening?
We're back at it again. And man,
grinning ear to ear over here.
just happy to be here. Just happy to be here. Man, we got a special one for you today.
Anybody that's ever watched a turkey hunting video.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you follow along our turkey hunting videos, you might recognize this voice or this face. Today is our very first video podcast. So we're trying out something a little different here. We got a bunch of cameras pointed in a bunch of different directions. It's a little, like when we first started the podcast thing, it was already kind of awkward, like sitting here talking to each other on a mic, sitting 2 foot in front of each other. But now we add in 4 cameras,
A bunch of lights.
and now it's awkward again. When we were just getting comfortable with this thing, now we've made it awkward again. So for those of you that are listening, for those of you that are viewing this, tonight we have Nate's very own Faja.
The Faja. Paterfamilias.
I didn't know y'all called me that all the time.
Richard Ramsey's in the podcast studio tonight. What's going on, Rich?
Not too much.
Not too much.
Just trying to figure all this equipment out.
That's
Turkey
right.
Slayer and Deer Slayer.
And Deer Slayer. Yeah, so long overdue. We've been talking about getting you on for one of these for a while now, and we always say we're going to do one around turkey season, and it just hadn't happened. But you and Nate just went and did something pretty special, so I said, hey, this would be the perfect time to get old Rich in here and talk a little bit about what happened. So I'll let you kind of take that away.
Well, I think I've talked about it, and I know if anybody follows the story, I kind of updated the story a little bit when we were out in Oklahoma deer hunting. Obviously, we've gone, 5-6 years now?
Yeah,
up to
5 years.
Oklahoma for waterfowl in January. But this year, something new happened. Well, 2 things new happened. One, they came down here during turkey season, got a chance to meet old Richard and do some turkey hunting with us. And he's like, hey, man, y'all ought to come up and go deer hunting. Well, anybody that knows 910 knows that Garrett ain't going for that. So I said, well, I'm going to take old Richard with me. He's a deer slaying fool. He'll love to go. And
Told him everything he knows, right?
That's right.
Hey, I give him the credit. Yeah, he taught me everything I know. So I've been, been waterfowl hunting with you for, several years and turkey hunting for a while. But really, my path started at deer hunting with him. There's pictures of me still pretty much wearing diapers in a stand with him. He was going to go,
Right.
whether he was on baby duty or not. So that's where my whole hunting background started, was right here with him.
It made way more sense to drag him on that trip than me, because
it's
just a
You'd
it's
been
just
mad.
a
You just
perfect
stayed in the
setup for y'all
hotel.
two.
And I'd have been mad if I wouldn't have been able to go.
But it was super special to be able to do that. Believe it or not, we changed the game up. Most of the time when me and Garrett and Bill or Keith or whoever's going with us go out there, we drive throughout the night. And this time, old man Richard weren't doing this overnight driving. He done made that clear right out the gate. So we decided we were going to drive and actually take kind of 2 days to get there and stay about halfway. Well, from our trips, is if there's ever somewhere to be at 5 a.m. in the morning, it's Arkansas. And I want to be right there to get that show that
Going
we usually
through
get.
East Arkansas at sunrise.
Yes,
is
the
special.
Is there a certain special part of that trip right there? So we actually drove. We left what time we leave here? Probably 5, 6 o'clock in the morning.
It was a little before 6.
And drove all the way to West Memphis and stayed in West Memphis that night and got up early in the morning just to see that show. I wanted to show him that show.
Right.
And it was kind of the same. I mean, we saw probably a couple hundred birds, but it weren't like it usually is in January.
Not like late January.
No, absolutely not. But we get there. So Brett's a star of that right there. I mean, he's the one that's helped me out this whole time and set this whole thing up. He has just recently got a new, pretty big lot of land he got leased.
A new pretty big lot of
Pretty
land.
big lot of land. I'm trying to think of how to word
I taught him that too, right?
Yeah, I'm from Castle Hayne. That's his fault. He got a big piece of land. He just started leasing, but it's like, he told me, I think it's like 1,200 acres. Yeah. And you hear that, and I'm used to hunting here. So 1,200 acres, I'm like, oh, crap, that's a pretty good piece of land.
Sure.
The footprint of this 1,200 acres ain't as big as you think because it's up. Yeah. It's on a mountain.
Yeah.
And it got a little sketchy on side-by-side run up a mountain. I ain't used to doing that with a rifle in my hand. But we pretty...
Easy girl.
Easy girl. There's cameras and stuff I'm bumping. So we showed up, and he had pretty much said, I want y'all to kind of hunt this spot. We've been saving it. I've hunted it one time since I got permission here. We've been pretty much saving it for y'all, and there's deer all over it. All right, cool. And the whole time, I mean, for the past 3 months, I've been getting camera pictures.
Oh, yeah. He's been building it
to
up.
him.
Yeah.
And, Brett usually likes to kind of like, oh, man, I don't know, man. There ain't no deer.
Yeah.
Nah.
He wasn't holding that back.
He weren't holding it back. He was just sending them. Be all kinds of hours of the night. He was sending me pictures. And so me and old Richard Ramsey here were like, well, we kind of need to sit back and decide which one we're going to pursue, because I hate to go in there and see what Southeast North Carolina boys would be like, that's a shooter.
Yeah.
And them guys walk away from it all day long.
Go in there and 30 minutes on your very first morning be done.
Well, funny you say that.
Yeah.
Because what happened, I didn't actually go with him the first morning. He sat with Dylan. Dylan went and sat with my dad, and Brett sat with me. And we went to two different spots on this mountain. So I haven't even really heard the full story of what went down with your first hunt. I know some of the details, but talk about that. Tell me about what you and Dylan, because I'll tell you one part I do remember is while me and Brett were cuddled up in a little ladder stand freezing to death, we getting pictures of them sitting in a ground blind with a buddy heater going, saying we're nice and cozy.
Yeah, so first morning, paint that picture.
All right.
What's going on?
So Nathan had already told me, he said, you better get some clothes. You're going to freeze to death. It's going to be cold out there. He told me that for like probably at least a month. He said, you need to go get some better clothes than what you got. You need some thick clothes. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll be okay. But it was pretty cold that morning. And so we went up in the side-by-side, 4 of us, and 5 of us actually. So it's pretty crowded. And they drove us within about 20 feet of the stand. Ground blind. I'm
Nice.
like, man, this is good hunting right
This
here
is all
already.
right.
I was liking it right out of the gate. Like, hey, you drop us off, there's the ground blind. But we got in and settled down, and they drove on across and down the backside of that particular mountain. But we settled in, and it's kind of like you said, we got there in about, I would say, 30 to 45 minutes after daylight. I saw a couple of does, and Dylan was like, hey, there's another one over there. They were kind of coming all over from different directions.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm not cold at all now. This is just right here. It's the kind of hunting I like. And watching those, and all of a sudden, Old School came out.
I got to give you the background on Old School for that.
Oh, yeah.
So one of the pictures he sent us,
The Old School's the name of the buck.
I named him Old School because we're sitting there looking at all these pictures, and we're kind of trying to pick through, what we're gonna pursue. And there's one deer that we didn't get a whole lot of good pictures of him right in front of the camera where you can really see the rack on and everything, but you could see him in the background, and he was just like super thick deer. Like you could tell he was a big deer, it's heavy deer. And I mean, he was just dark, a lot of dark brown on him and everything like that. He just looked real old.
Yeah.
And you could tell he had a good rack on him, but you really couldn't tell what he was. And I know old Richard wanted a real tall deer. And I kept looking at that. I was like, man, that's an old deer. That's one to chase right there. That's got to be a 200-pound deer. Well, me and Brett were sitting there trying to figure out, because you got 4 or 5 different stands or properties or whatever. It's hard to kind of keep track. Remember that deer you sent me a picture? So I started naming them.
Yeah.
That one got Old School because he's probably the biggest and oldest deer on camera. So I named him Old School, and I was like, you need to go kill Old School. Well, Brett said if you want him, he's going to be there because he's been there 3 or 4 days every single day, morning and evening. He's there. So
and he showed up that morning. It didn't take long, and he showed up. And
20 minutes, 30 minutes into a hunt.
Yeah, and so like I said, we're watching does, and then he shows up, and I think during that time, I had already said, "Hey, we're getting cold over here," and I'm like, "Man, I'm good here."
Buddy heater just a pump.
Yeah. Well, actually, we hadn't cut it on at that time.
Oh,
but,
okay.
Dylan, he was kind of getting cold, and I was fine. I'm like, "Man, this is okay." But he came out and he chased some does around, went back in the woods, and you could see him way back in the woods, and he probably messed around for at least an hour, chasing does, going back and forth. Went over, kind of made a scrape. The does were going in and out. He would chase them. He'd come back out. He'd go back, and Dylan was looking at me like, "Are you going to shoot him?" And I'm like, I said, it's mighty early. I said, I hate to do it. It's just an hour into the hunt. We had 3 days supposedly, so I was like, I just hate to do it this early. And if I'd have heard him shoot or something, I'd have said, okay, I'm going to go ahead and knock him out. But
knock him out.
But I said, he kept looking at me, and I'm like, should I shoot him or not? And he was like, it's up to you. I'm like, I wanted a yes or no. But he never would give me an answer. So that morning we sat there and we watched him the whole time, which was really the funny part to me was, I thought it was the cool part really. But here I am, I'm all snug in this blind. And then we do finally turn the heater on, and they're texting us saying, we're freezing to death. I'm saying, yeah, Nathan said, yeah, you're going to get cold, right?
You better go get some more clothes.
I was never cold the whole time. Of course, we watched.
Meanwhile, he's in this ground blind like we turned
Rhino 300.
Ain't got no wind blowing on him. He's got the buddy heater if he gets there.
Watching
deer.
Nice buck. So.
Meanwhile, a couple 100 yards away down this hill, me and Brett. And Brett's a little, he's, the size of Brett.
Yeah.
He's a little more in shape than me. Well, I'm in shape, but it's just a different shape.
Different shape.
But he's like, oh man, it's pretty good size, 2-person ladder stand. I was like, all right. I'm sitting there thinking, I was like, man, I've tried to get in some ladder stands before, and it's pretty tight when you're wide as me. So we get up in there, and I'm toting camera gear and all kinds of mess, and
that makes you twice as big too.
Yeah. Well, that and I don't know how cold was it that first morning.
I think it was about 20
something. Yeah. So it was cold.
It was breezy too. It was windy.
Just threw up in my mouth a little bit.
Yeah.
Bojangles don't taste good.
You really don't like deer hunting talk, do you?
It's making me throw up. Stop.
But so we climb up in there, and we're like shoulder to shoulder, and I'm sitting like this, and I'm like, Brett, this ain't gonna work. I was like, we might as well just take this lens. I got the big lens, and I was like, we might as well just take this lens and put it on the ground. There's no way I can film this. He's like, all right. So he climbs down, he throws it on the ground. Well, I didn't throw it, he laid it on the ground. Climbs back up there. So we're in a lot more open area. He's kind of, if you probably could see maybe 40, 50 yards,
I'd
60.
say probably 100 yards in some places.
To your left, I guess. But we're in a lot open. I can see 200-300 yards. And so there's a lot of wind. Yeah. I'm up in a stand, ain't no cover. And me and him are just sitting there shivering. And we saw one cow horn come out. And that was it. So I ain't got the deer heating me up either.
You didn't get spoiled on the first day.
No, I definitely did not get spoiled. And I'm sitting there, and it's he didn't really have a whole lot of information going into this. There's a lot of deer there, and that's one thing he'll tell you is like, just because we saw that cow horn don't mean there weren't a big mamma jamma in the woods.
He said there's new deer coming in every day.
Every day. And they had some big deer on that camera. It's just that morning, with the weather, whatever, they were all up there with him, and none of them were down there with me, and I'm freezing. And especially our feet got freezing. And as we're sitting there, and Brett's like, we can get down whenever you're ready. You can tell he's ready to go. They're sending us pictures of the buddy heater.
Oh, God.
Just rubbing it in.
Yeah.
But and pictures of old school.
Old school. They're sitting there watching deer.
A little bit of video on the camera and all.
Which, him with turkeys. He'll sit there and watch turkeys, and why didn't you shoot him? I just wanted to watch him.
Oh, yeah.
He does that
just
with deer,
not quite
too.
the one I was looking for.
Yeah, he does that with deer, too.
Well,
I hear people do that with deer. I don't hear people do that with turkeys.
I normally don't do it with deer a whole lot, especially one like that. He was a nice-looking deer. So.
Well, we went to Brahms, right?
Of course.
That had to happen. I think I got Richard to go 3 times.
That's not bad.
He didn't pull a sixer
so
like me and you.
What'd you think of Brahms?
It was okay.
Okay.
Nowhere near like...
not like Nate sold it to me.
No, he's got another...
pork chop. What was the name of that place? Captain John's, or what was that?
Yeah, I think it was Captain John's.
But
There's a steakhouse that we went to.
That
See, I don't even know nothing about that.
Oh, the first night.
We don't get far enough away from Brahms to find nothing.
Yeah, it was.
Except usually we hit Mexican the first night. That's become
this was the very first night we got there, and
Brett said that pork chop's pretty good, so I got one,
and I got a steak.
And I gave him some of my pork chop, and he wanted more. He said it was better than the steak.
Oh,
it was better than any ribeye I've ever ate.
Really?
So anyway,
I
I
remember
remember
that.
there in the corner. That's the best pork chop I ever had in my life.
I mean, anybody that goes on vacation or hunting trips, anybody will tell you. I mean, half of it is just eating the
Trying
good
new
food that you
yeah.
can't get back home. You know, it's just part of it.
Well, we tried to go get some more than pork chops the whole time. It just didn't happen.
well, we got sidetracked anyway on the pork chop off the hunt, right?
Well, I mean, the pork chop was just as fun as the hunt in some
Well,
point.
it was. Yeah.
So let me back you up for a second because I don't deer hunt. So I had a question just listening to y'all. You're talking about the area that you were hunting, and you're saying Brett's saying that new deer are coming in there every day. So do deer travel?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, is it the rut that
Yeah,
pushes them around?
Yeah. So what most
just
of the time, like you got, we hunt in North Carolina and in Oklahoma. You can bait, and a lot of times,
Because I thought
especially
like when a deer has like his bed, that's his bed.
when they're rutting, they're moving all over the
They're
place.
literally
Yeah.
They
somewhere.
might go 2 or
They
3 or
could be
4
somewhere
miles
different
or
every
further.
night.
Yeah. And in some of the cameras he's got, on that 1,200 acres, he's got the same deer on both. It's a big
So
piece
is that
of
just a
property.
rut thing? They don't necessarily
I'd say
travel
more
as
than a
much?
rut.
They're just breeding basically, just like turkeys during the turkey
Yeah.
season. They're out looking and chasing does.
But then, I mean, when you say like, well, he's got old school has been on camera every single day, so he's obviously not really.
He's hanging
traveling.
around that mountain, but
there's some
he
does
weren't
that come in
there 3 or 4 days prior.
Yeah.
He just showed up. Matter of fact,
So they might be in an area for a few days, and then they be
Completely
somewhere
gone.
else.
where he
yeah.
killed Old School at, I think the next day or whenever we were on the way home, he sent me a picture on the road. There was a whole brand new buck sitting there now.
2 different ones
Two,
before
yeah.
we got home, I think.
That's what I'm saying. So they're just constantly new ones coming up and showing up.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that in a minute. Brett had to bail on some of this trip. I'll explain that one to you. But so yeah, first morning he's 20 minutes in. He could have ended the trip. And I get, you got 3 days ahead of you. You've seen all the pictures. Pulling the trigger 20 minutes into the trip is kind of
Oh,
rough.
I mean, no,
That's rough.
I wouldn't blame you either. Like,
But-
it would be hard to shoot a deer on the first day.
Well, not only that, then I'm like, okay, what am I do for 3 days? Why he
Right.
nuts? Yeah.
You're gonna be a cameraman.
You're gonna be a cameraman.
I can mess that up, but,
And it was funny because you talk about Dylan, and when we sat down at Brahms, Dylan was looking at me, and I was like, "Was he pretty big?" He was sitting there just a big eye, and he's like, "I can't believe he didn't shoot that thing." And I think
And see, that's how I would go into a place like that, having a local with me, and I would judge that like, how excited did he get?
Mhm.
That'll tell me whether I should have
Should shoot
shot
it
or
or
not.
Well,
like,
he was pretty excited, and his eyes were real big. He's like, "Are you going to shoot him?" I'm like, "It's mighty early." And he never would say shoot him or not shoot him. He said,
and
"It's
I
up to
will
you."
say this: after you did shoot Old School, that
well, you hadn't got to that point yet.
Well-
you just spoiled it. I didn't even know you shot it.
I'm sorry. Well, he shot Old School, and I'll tell you this: after
Just not the first
it,
day,
It was
man.
not
late,
the first
not
day,
that day.
later in the trip. But when he did, you don't realize how deceiving that big body is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A deer's a lot bigger than you think it is when you walk up to it. But
So
now
anyway, that first morning,
you had a good time because
basically
you were
let
like,
him
"Man,
go.
I got to see so many deer moving. You don't get to
Yeah.
see that back home."
I could have stayed there right on and on. They were ready to come out. So,
But we were freezing.
They kind of like sissies over there. So I'm like,
Sissies.
okay.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
So we came on down and went to
fake
Brahms.
news. I can't hit the button.
Went to Brahms, I guess, after that, right?
Yeah, we went to Brahms that first day. You knew I was itching for that. And then I think it kind of rubbed him sour a little bit because that evening we're like, all right, we're going to turn around. We're going to go back, in the evening. And me and Brett actually split off. We went to a different property he had, and he went back up there to where Old School was. And so it's 2 different properties. So you went with, I think Subbuster went with y'all, didn't he?
Yeah, he dropped us off.
He dropped you off and then went further
Well,
down.
no. We dropped him off. We dropped him off on the power line.
Okay,
first.
and then you went on up with the
And then
side
we
by
went
side.
up. And when we went up to where the ground blind was, we pulled up there and we looked, and there's a bunch of cows out there. There were 5 cows out there, And I said, well, just try to run them off, with the side by side. And one of them turned on us and looked like he was going to charge.
Yeah.
Actually, I said, you better back up. So, but we couldn't run them off. So really that whole afternoon we sat there and watched cows.
Oh, man.
I've got some video of them, like, well, this is real interesting. I know there's no deer going to come out, while there's a bunch of cows out there, but.
So the neighboring property, the guy's got cows, and apparently this isn't the first incident, but apparently I guess they've broke down the fence, whatever, and they've got over onto that property. Well, not a huge ordeal, you wouldn't think, but then you got to see how much corn a cow will eat. Yeah. I mean, they tore the whole pile down.
It was gone. They ate it all. And I knew they weren't going to leave long as there was corn there. Yeah. So I was like, there's no deer coming out. But
so that's what he spent the entire evening. After passing up on Old School that morning, he went back that evening and watched cows.
Didn't see anything but 5 cows.
I had a really bad cow incident turkey hunting in Tennessee one time where it was a near-death experience.
With a cow?
With a bull, yeah.
Did you have a gun?
Yes,
I shouldn't have been near death, and maybe for him.
Well, I don't know.
Went turkey hunting, got steak.
I don't know if a turkey load would have done anything more than tick him off.
Put his eyes out, maybe.
Yeah, but it was the same thing. We were hunting a pasture and had a bunch of cows move in. And they didn't pay us no mind. They were grazing in front of us, and then all of a sudden they finally saw us, and then they just sitting there staring at us.
That reminds me of the pit.
It was like, so it was this field, and it was like this little creek bottom, and then we were in the woods. And they just kind of sit there and stared at us. And I was like, man, I wish these things would go on. Well, then here comes the bull slowly grazing through. Well, when he saw us, I guess he realized that they were all staring at us. And it was me, Delmas, and then my cousin up in Tennessee. And that bull saw us, and he didn't like it at all. He started like snorting and kicking the ground, and he came over there and was hitting his head and horns on branches and stuff. And
making it scrape.
And I mean, dude, and I swear he was here to that wall from us, like right there. And basically, I was asking my cousin, I was like, he goes, don't shoot these things, but if he comes across this creek, we're all shooting. And he was like, but we ain't doing that unless it's like death experience, because we're going to get in a lot of trouble if we shoot this bull. And I was like, you don't think they can run fast through the woods, do you? I'm thinking, we bebop through these trees. Surely a big old bull can't come through that. I don't know. But I look over, and I'm not playing it down because I was terrified. But I look over at Delmas, and you could see him just shaking. Like I've never seen
You say bebop through the woods, I just hear like a little cartoon. But you just going in and out of trees. But yeah, that's the cows were ticking Brett off. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Because you could sit there and he kept texting us saying, I ain't got nothing but cows. I heard these cows ain't gonna go away. And Brett's sitting there looking at the cameras. Like, look, they're eating my corn. And we sit there, and me and Brett sitting in the stand or the ground blind we were in. We just slowly watched all the corn disappear. They'd sit there the entire. They were still dark. They were still there, weren't they?
Yeah, we left out. They were still there.
Still there.
Cows don't. They don't realize it's deer corn. You have to start leaving the bag so they'll see.
Well, we put a sign. But so that evening we had switched it up, and we went to another property, me and Brett. And when we walked in, we were going to a ground blind, and there was a doe that was there. Buck might have been behind her, I don't know. But we scared her off when we walked in. She hopped off in the woods. I told him, I was like, hey, man, one just ran off. Excuse me, Bojangles. Whew. So we sat down, and we're probably sitting there for 30, 45 minutes, and here come this doe. And she come right in. She already knew we walked right into the stand, so she knew we were there. Walked right in and just started blowing. She just blowing her head off the whole time. And that's what a doe do when they're scared of something or something they don't like.
They know something.
That's their warning. Yeah. So she's sitting there blowing like crazy, and finally she runs off, and that's all we saw. So now I'm 2 hunts into this trip, and I've seen a doe and a cow horn. Ticked off doe and a cow horn. Meanwhile, he's watched a whole bunch of deer and a whole bunch of cow. But Brett called it, and you know how Brett is, man. When he's got something up his sleeve or he knows what's going on, he's kind of like, man, I'm telling you, we need to do this. And he looked at me, he's like, dude, I know it didn't turn out this evening. That's all we saw was that doe. He's like, I know it didn't turn out this evening, but I'm telling you, we need to stick to it. We need to stick to this spot. This is a good spot. I was like, all right.
So same place that morning and evening.
No. So that morning.
Did I miss?
That morning I was in a ladder stand on the same mountain he was on. But that evening when he was watching cows, me and Brett went to a whole nother
Gotcha.
You were
different.
about, what, 20 minutes away or so?
Yeah, 20, 25 minutes up the road to a different property. It's a small property. It's not a whole lot of land, but it's just he's got this nice food plot out there, and it's pretty good little. We got a lot of pictures from that feeder he's got out there too. But he kept telling me, he's like, man, he's like, I think we need to stick with this. I was like, all right, man. I mean, I'll take your word on it. You know this place better than I do.
So that's where we went the second morning. He went to same
me and him
spot.
Well, we dropped him off. He went somewhere different. Morning
Right.
2, he's like, I've seen the top of this mountain twice, so let's go. I'm gonna go somewhere different.
Plus the cows were still
The cows
there.
were still
we
there.
said there's no use in going back there
So
at that point.
he actually went to a new property. Like I said, Brett's got properties all over the place, but he went to a third property, dropped him off, and I was thinking Brett was going to go back with me again. And I was like, are you going back with me? He's like, no, you know where it's at, right? I was like, yeah. He's like, I'm probably just going to come over here. Brett was worn out. He's tired, man. He's like, I'm probably just going to walk up in the woods here and sit on this ridge, just hang out in here. I was like, all right, that's cool. Well, old Sud Buster was in the truck with him, and he was like, where you going? I was like, I'm going to go back where I went yesterday. And he's like, all right, you want me to go with you? I was like, yeah, come with me, Sud. Sud's a good luck charm. You was with me when I got my turkey this year. Come on with me.
Catching the rickets out here,
catching
man.
the rickets. So I took old Sud Buster with me. And I'll give you 2 guesses what Sud did about 20 minutes in.
I know him. I've seen him like a couple of times prior to that. He was asleep.
You ain't got to give me 2 guesses.
Old Sud done passed out. He was conked out asleep. And Brett's sitting there texting me. And like I said, we're sitting over this little food plot. There's a feeder out there and there's a little ground blind. You can't really see, but just that one direction. So we're sitting there, and I started seeing him doze off, and I'm like, he's going to pass out and start snoring. I was like, I ain't going to wake him up. I'm going to let him sleep, but if he starts real loud, I'm going to have to wake him up.
Oh, yeah.
And Brett's just wake him up if he starts snoring. He knows what's going on. Well, we're sitting there, and it was 6 something. I mean, it was just light, and I seen a doe pop out. She was 40 yards, popped out right toward the feeder. So, I tapped Sud to wake him up from the snoring. I'm like, hey, man, there's a doe. And about the time he sat up and looked, I said, oh, big buck, big buck. Well, my deer come after this doe 20 steps behind her, and people seen the pictures, whatever. I'm sure there's people that's killed some monster deer. To me, Godzilla walked out the woods because I can see tines and they're that tall, and I'm just like, good Lord. I was like, son, big buck, big buck, big buck, big buck. So he jumps up and he's sitting there fiddling, trying to get his phone out and everything. I don't know if you remember when I killed my turkey, he was trying to get his phone out and he's sitting there filming with his phone. All of a sudden the flash comes on. I'm like, turn that off. So I'm like, oh Lord, he's going to do the same thing. But he's trying to get his phone out, and I was worried to death that Godzilla was going to leave, because that's the biggest deer I've ever seen. I was
He was
like,
a nice buck.
I was like, I don't want this thing to get out of here. So I'm sitting there trying to get the gun up, get it right. And I bet from the time he walked out to the time I pulled the trigger was maybe 2 minutes, not even.
Oh, wow.
I mean, I weren't taking no chances with him running away.
One of them 0 to 100.
Yeah,
deals.
0 to 100.
He didn't do the Richard Ramsey. Hey, well, let's watch him a little while.
No. That's the biggest deer I've ever seen. I was like, he's dying. And I think I'm sitting there, and I want to say, so I was like, you gonna shoot him, right? What do you think? I'm sitting there, click, safety's off. You better hold your ears. So when he walked out, he comes out and hits this scrape. And I'm sitting there trying to get the gun right. We took a little tripod and mount with a little V for the gun.
Yeah.
And about the time I got to where I was set up to shoot him, he kind of walked, and there was this big old oak tree right in the middle. And he got to where I could still shoot him from there, but it would have been a little bit on the sketchy side shooting right past this tree. I was like, if I shoot this tree, I'm going to be really, really mad. I want to
Definitely don't want to screw it up.
Yeah. So I was like, I'm going to wait till he gets past it. He's all right. And he walked by it, and it's cold as mess too this morning. And he walked by it, you see his breath coming out. And as soon as he got on the other side of that tree, I was like, you ready? He goes, yeah. Boom, shot him. Well, in the midst of all this, my heart going 1,000 miles an hour, deer took off running that way. And I'm losing it.
Uh-oh.
I'm losing it. He didn't drop and get up. He just took off running. And I'm like, oh my God. My heart sank. I was like, there's no way I missed that deer. I mean, this deer's like 50 yards. There's no way I missed this deer. And he's like, "Oh no, you got him, son. He's a motivational speaker."
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like,
He's the hype man.
Yeah, I'm like, son, I don't know, dude. He didn't drop. He didn't even flinch. It looked like he just ran. And I'm scared to death. I'm losing my mind. He's like, "I'm telling you, Nate, he's dead. He's right on the other side of that cedar tree." I'm like, "You saw something different than what I saw, Bubba." That deer ran away. So jump out. We walk out there to where he was standing at. I'm looking for blood. Ain't no blood.
Uh-oh.
Now I could cry. And he's like, "Man, I'm telling you, man, he dead. He right over there." "No, he ain't, son. There ain't no blood. There ain't nothing that says he's dead." So at this point, I thought I had ruined it. And I was in a dark place, put it that way.
Yeah.
So he walks over there and he walks around a cedar tree where he said he was. He goes, "Nate." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Come here." I was like, "You see him?" He goes, "No, but he's right here." All right, son. So we walk over there, and sure enough, as soon as I get to where Sud's standing, blood. It's like, whoo, a little bit of relief. I ain't found a deer, but I found some blood. That's good. Walk another 20 feet, find some more blood. All right, so he's bleeding. It starts getting a little thicker this time. I'm getting a little better about, okay, the deer's dead somewhere, some thick blood. Well, out of all this little flat food plot we're hunting, there's a hole in the earth back there, and it drops down about 25 feet straight down in this ditch. Well, I don't even know if you call that a ditch. It's the side of a mountain right there. Well, sure enough.
Guess where he's at?
At the very bottom. And I'm excited, we're slap hands. But then the first thing out of my mouth is, "How in the crap we gonna get him out of there?" He goes, "We're gonna go down there and get him." I was like, "You gonna go down there and get him? How are we gonna get down there?" I mean, it's steep too.
Yeah.
But we crawled down there and got him out. He's sitting there, texting Brett, telling him, I had text Brett. I told him big buck down, and he just he didn't really buy it, I guess. He thought I was messing with him, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But we sent him some. He's like, "Send me a picture." When they ask you for a picture, he's calling you bluff.
Pics or it didn't happen.
Yeah. So we sent it to him, and I guess he weren't sitting probably far where Richard was sitting. He said he went up on a tree somewhere selling a ridge. He jumped in the truck and drove down to where we were and got the side by side so we can get him out of there. But we'll switch gears from my excitement, because I went from not seeing deer to boom, it's dead. I just killed Godzilla. The stand you went to that morning. So Brett said, he's like, "Man, I got a hang on stand there, a lock on stand." He's like, "But it's a sketchy climb." He's like, "We wanted to get it up kind of high, so you got to do some maneuvering to get up there."
Yeah.
And we have no clue where we are. And I was like, "I don't know if I really want my dad out there in the freezing cold trying to figure out how to get up in this tree and doing some aerobic stuff to get up there."
With 4 layers of clothes on.
Yeah, and a gun and everything else, not knowing where he's at, So he's like, "Well, my buddy put a ladder stand there for bow hunting, right near that same area. You can just go to that." He's like, "All right, I'll do that." And then I don't think he enjoyed that ladder stand too much.
Well, it was the stand would have been comfortable, but the tree you put it on, it had like a bow in it, so it was pushing right up on the top of your back.
Oh no!
And it hadn't even got daylight, and I was like squirming around. And I was like, "There's no way I'm gonna see anything." I'm squirming from side to side. I can't get comfortable, but I finally kind of just sat sideways in it and kind of got comfortable. I sat there.
You sat there a while because
it was after 10 o'clock that morning. I know, so you'd already shot the deer, and the buzzards came and got him and all that almost.
We shot the deer, went and got breakfast and everything else, and we just told them, "Hey, stay put, man. Them deer are moving late. They're moving 8 or 9 o'clock.
Yeah,
ain't no point in getting down right now. Just stay there. There's a big deer in there." So we.
I saw 2 or 3 deer that morning.
I didn't tell him I was getting breakfast till after we picked him up.
Yeah, of course.
I would have been ready to get down then. Okay.
But you saw, how many deer did you see that second morning?
4 or 5 that morning.
Does or?
Well, that cow horn came up, and then the other buck supposedly was behind him that I never saw.
Oh yeah.
And then he went in the woods to my right, and then 3 deer come out. So I was like, 3 does came out, went over toward the corn pile. So I'm like, okay, there's going to be a buck behind him. So I kept looking. And the cow horn came right under me, looked at me, and I just sat still, and he went on about his way. But then they text me and said, "Don't get down. It's about time for the deer to start moving good at about 10 o'clock.
At the restaurant. Don't get down yet.
Pretty much.
But then
can I get a pork chop?
He'd have been real mad if I got a pork chop
biscuit.
He'd have been real mad if I went back and got a pork chop. But no, so Brett's got the cell cameras like I do, and he actually was showing me pictures. We could see the buck standing there. Couldn't really tell, what he was or how big he was. But you could tell it was a decent buck standing in the edge of the woods.
Right in front of me.
Yeah, right in front of him.
I couldn't see him.
But he couldn't see him because of a tree.
They said, don't move. There's a buck right in the woods right in front of him. And so I was like, I really started looking, but I never did see him. He I saw some of the does kind of go a different direction. So I think he just kind of.
Did Brett ever show you the picture?
He said he tried to get the HD
photo,
but it never was that great. He couldn't tell what it was.
You could tell there was a buck standing there, and there weren't no cow horn. I was looking at the picture. I was like, well, crap.
But anyway, so that kind of was over really at that point, because once I was like, hey, y'all might as well come on once they kind of went on about their ways. Yeah, so, and that's when he got the picture of the monster buck.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of good deer, and talking to you is kind of hard to explain because you're just like, I don't care.
No, I'm in it.
But Brett got a picture of one that anybody and their mama would be after, and he's like, man, I don't mean to bail on y'all, but I'm going to kill this deer. And I was like, dude, go do your thing, man. We drop us off somewhere, go get him. It's a Goliath looking thing, and it was a rut. He came through, got one picture of him.
Yeah. So
he might be 2 counties over now. I don't know, but he's like, I'm gonna go try to get on this thing. I was like, yeah, do your thing. So you go ahead and do that this evening, or that evening.
Yeah, because you'd already shot, so you were done.
Yeah.
So that's when we decided we would go back and go to the same spot where old school was.
Because the cows, Brett had called the neighbor and pretty much said, hey, you need to get your cows out today. I got guys in hunting. I need the cows gone today. So he went in there and got them out with a 4-wheeler and I guess a feed bucket or something.
Yeah, somehow he got them, but
corn.
Trailed the corn all the way out. The deer going to follow him. But
so that's where we went that afternoon. So
went back to see old school.
So
this is morning day 3.
No, this is
afternoon.
Second afternoon.
Day. Okay, day 2 evening.
Yeah, I killed mine that morning. Got breakfast. Took him breakfast. He got down. That's when Brett peeled off and went to go chase that other deer.
So actually, we knew the corn was gone because of the cow. So we went to Walmart and got 3 bags of corn.
But first, he's got this huge car hauler with a side-by-side on the back of it. And Brett goes, well, your truck pulled that? I'm like, we can find out.
Oh, and it was like up in the air. What did they call that when the guys
squatting?
Squatting.
Squatting for sure.
And we took her to Walmart.
Yeah.
Fitting.
Yeah.
So I went in and got some corn because we said, hey, and just in case the deer doesn't come out today, at least we'll be corn because,
we still got another morning to go.
At least get the does coming out. So usually if you get the does coming out, you can see bucks. So went and got corn and all, and we dumped it out. And Sud went on down the hill to wherever he was.
He sat on the side of a ridge somewhere.
Yeah, so we got in the stand, and I guess I probably sat there about an hour and saw a doe or 2, and then we saw that 8-point, that younger deer. He was a nice buck.
Yeah. He'd have been dead in North Carolina all day.
He had real long tines. It weren't quite as, it's probably only like 14 inches wide. So I was like, I want something a little bit wider, but he was real tall. He was a nice looking buck, but we watched him for at least an hour.
If not more than that.
It's kind of like the same thing as that first morning, but he was chasing does. He went over and made a scrape, laid down in the woods. We seen him lay down in the woods.
Well, the funniest part, I'm filming now. I'm in full on camera mode because I'm going to film my dad kill his.
Yeah.
And when he came out, he came out and chased 2 does off the pile, and when he did, he kind of grunted. And I guess when he grunted, I don't know if he snorted up corn dust or something, but this deer was like instantly just started sneezing. And when I say sneezing, I bet he sneezed 100 and some times, like just whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. That's all. He weren't even focused on the does.
I could see the stuff coming out of his nose. It was just like a
person
person sneezing. He was walking through. He kept
shaking his head,
his back foot and doing like that, and he'd sneeze and kind of take his back foot.
And he to the point where he had forgot there was does there. He just walked over in the edge of the woods and started sneezing.
He's just messed up.
And I think he might have got lightheaded because he laid down.
Yeah.
Started spinning. Didn't know where he's at.
The woods were spinning.
Yeah, the corn was spinning, so he had to lay down because he just flopped down and he was like, well, crap, I guess he's going to bed down right there. I was like, he's probably dizzy.
He's got one leg propped up on a tree.
I ain't never in my life seen a deer do that.
I hadn't either. I've never seen one sneezing like that.
Over and over and over and over.
So anyway, he kind of just moseyed on off, I guess, or kind of went. They were back and forth. They'd come out, you'd see him, then you wouldn't see him. He went on around somewhere, and then
which made it hard for me because as I'm filming, I'm looking for old school. I want old school to come out there so I can see this thing. And every time he'd leave and he'd come back, I'm like, is that him? Is that him? I'm sitting there zooming the camera. It's like, I think that's the same one. Yeah, that's the same one. And we watched him again for another 20 minutes. But
and then he came out.
well, when which way did that first deer? He left kind of off to your left, right?
Yeah.
He left out that way. Well, he probably couldn't have been gone 20 minutes.
No, he wasn't gone long.
And
we figured it was the same one.
We
coming
see a buck through the woods again. We're like, it's probably him. At this point, he's came out so many times, I'm kind of like over it, like that's him. Same one we've been watching all morning. So I'm sitting there zooming in on the camera. I'm sitting there looking, and I'm sitting there trying to count because the buck we had been watching was an 8-point, and old school technically would be a 9. Well, he technically is a 9.
He was
He's got a kicker, but he would have been a 10. But he was missing one of his brow tines or eye guards, whatever they want to call them up there. He was missing one on the left side. But I know he had 3 on his left side. So as I'm sitting there looking through the woods, and it's different, man. And we try to explain this to Brett and them, and they don't really understand. Here we hunt lanes. You sit in a stand, you're looking down this lane, you're looking down that lane.
And that's it.
If they're rutting and they're running across, you might not even know he ran across the road unless you're looking down there. Here you can sit and just look kind of through the woods. And
their woods are way more open than ours.
It's open, and it helps when we were in a ground blind, so we're ground level looking under all the trees.
Yeah.
But you could just see deer moving all around. And as I'm sitting there, he kept, moving his head around, hitting branches. And finally I saw that I guess you call it like a G3, 4?
3.
Yeah, on that left side. And I'm just like, that's old school. He's like, no, that's the same one. I was like, no, that's old school. I'm looking through this big old lens. That is old school. That is not the same deer. Well, sure enough, he walked out and just enough where we could see him. And, well, I could see him. I think you argued with me for a little while about it being old school.
I looked through binoculars, and when I seen he didn't have the brow
Brow
tine, I'm
tine.
like, that's him.
And so now the question pops in my head. Is he going to watch this thing again, or is he going to shoot him?
I'd already made my mind.
Bad luck to watch him a second time.
At that point, we were pretty much 2/3 of because we were planning on staying 3 days.
Yeah.
So this was the end of the
Evening
second
of the
day. And I'm
second.
like, man, if I let him go now,
You
and
might
I
not
come
get a
back to
third
North
chance.
Carolina without a deer, I'm gonna be crying like I would have
Especially
been.
knowing that Nate already shot a good buck too.
Oh, yeah.
And I had let this one go. I'm like, nah, if he comes out, I'm gonna go ahead and pop him. So
Funny fact you say that, because he walks out to the corn pile and he's sitting there eating, and I'm, he's getting the gun up, getting it ready. I'm just like, oh yeah, it's about to happen. I'm about to video this deer dying. Well, I'm thinking, the average hunter,
that's average.
deer walks out, you let him turn broadside. That way you can, get a good shot behind the shoulder. Well, this deer's facing us, and he's sitting there eating, and I'm sitting there just holding the camera on him, thinking, okay, he's probably going to wait for him to turn broadside right here. Probably walk to the left a little bit. Boom, it'll be done. As soon as that deer looks up like that, ka-doom! Scared the crap out of me, because I was not thinking he was going to shoot him facing us.
You see the camera shaking.
Shoots him right in the neck.
You didn't give him a heads up.
Well, I knew I wasn't going to mount him. I was going to do the skull mount or
Which I don't know why I'd have mounted that deer.
European, but he was only like 45 yards, I think. So I'm like, next shot, you won't have to chase him. You won't have to know. He fell like a rock.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he went down like a sack of potatoes, but scared the crap out of me, because when in the moment you've been turkey hunting.
Oh yeah.
You're sitting there looking through the LCD screen. You're sitting there just trying to make sure you got focus, and you just
We've learned on a turkey video, you
let
get it
go.
set and you take your hands off.
so you don't jump.
Yeah.
Or you're going to jump
because
probably.
we have a lot of videos where he goes, ugh.
and I would plan to do that, but you see what happened was, as I'm sitting there and like, okay, he's sitting there still facing us, I didn't know as soon as his head came up, kadoosh, he was going to drop him, and scared the crap out of me.
I bet.
And then cameraman mistake. He was wanting to get out and go over there and look at him, and I'm sitting there like fiddling with this 12-foot long lens over here I was like, this ain't gonna work. Ain't no way I can film this, but I'm gonna try it. So I just got out and stood back and tried to film him walking up to the deer. And Brett's got them cell cameras, so I was like, well, you shot him right in front of the camera. Give Brett old thumbs up. So he's walking by just looking at the trail
I never
camera.
did see if he got that picture or sent
he sent it to me. I think he sent it to me.
I don't think I saw it.
But he's sitting there just thumbs
Well,
up.
the deer's laying on the ground. I mean, like, why wouldn't you give a thumbs up?
But and that we had 2 or 3 deer as we're standing there run out. There was a doe that ran out behind the blind.
And a buck right at the edge
And a
of
buck
dark.
right at the edge of dark. There's deer moving everywhere.
And you got it on film. That's cool.
Yeah. The little bit of arguing between Meathead over here.
He's talking about can't because I can't hear.
Richard Ramsey can't hear too well. So whenever he thinks he's whispering, he's talking about this loud. And I'm like, you better be quiet. There's a deer right here. It's kind of like when you're talking about that story on that last video we posted, or one of the last videos we posted, when Sub was like, wake up.
Yeah.
You know, they're getting kind of close now. We might want to be quiet. And he's sitting there, the deer standing there 40 yards away, and he's like, you want me to shoot him? I'm like, I want you to be quiet. That's what I want you to do. I was scared to death. That deer was
So
going
he
to
did
run off.
give you a heads up, kind of.
It was a good hunt though. I mean, even the whole trip actually.
And this is the first time you hunted out of state?
Yeah. I've always kind of wanted to go to Texas for some reason to hunt on one
We
of those.
weren't far
you see
from
it,
Sure.
and I'm like, okay, well, this is pretty close, and plus it's open. There's no fences or anything. It's just open, and then
It's public
so
land.
So I was like, man, I couldn't.
It
pass
was
that.
definitely, well, you got a lot more show than I did. I mean, but you still.
I mean, it was a perfect trip. I mean, we kind of relaxed going out there.
And I mean, I know
trip was
you've
good.
taken hunting trips out of state, but that's the first time you've deer
I've
hunted
never
out of
deer
state.
hunted out of
Yeah.
state now.
So it's first for both of y'all.
Like he said, it was relaxing because we stopped halfway. We were, he's like, man, I feel so much better by stopping halfway. But then we, of course, get the great pork chop. And then that afternoon, after we fill our guts with pork chop, he says, I'm going to take you to a housing development. And we rode around in this housing development, and the nice houses too, probably $1 million or more.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's like the landfall of the country.
yeah, 50 or more deer, probably some nice
People's
bucks
yards,
out there.
front yards, walking around with big old racks.
Yeah.
So I was like, man, I've never seen anything like that. And but that was nice, but it was
Different. It was you can't do that, and I don't think he understands that. Like, and I send him pictures of, I'll get this little cow horn or a little basket rack 6 or 8 on our cameras. I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm looking at, and he's sending me pictures of like Goliath.
Yeah, it's
like,
a different
we're
world.
in different worlds, man. But
when we went to, and I think that deer was, like you said, the deer was over 200 pounds, which he had already told us. I said, how big are your deer? He's like, probably about 170 pounds. I'm like, he said that would be 170 pound would be a big deer. And I'm like, that's kind of like it is here at home. Like, I've never shot a deer that weighed over 200 pounds.
So even for them, that was a very big.
that's why Dylan
deer.
was like,
yeah. But I think he said he was 204 pounds.
204 pounds.
But we of course took his rack, so we went to taxidermy to take his over the next morning.
Yep.
And when I laid mine down, I was walking through there. I'm like, man, look at all these nice bucks everywhere, and got heads on the floor and so forth. And I laid it down beside one of them. Like, well, he's not really as small as I thought he was.
Yeah, that body's deceiving. I mean, he's
nice. Buck.
My deer probably weighed what, 130 pounds?
Probably 150 maybe.
150 pounds. Weren't a huge body.
He was a younger deer too.
But he was, he was a younger deer, but he was tall. But his 204 pounds. That's a
He was. I think he said he was 7 years old.
yeah.
So yours was
7 years old.
better horned. Yours was better bodied.
Yeah, if you want to look at it like that.
He was an older deer. So that's a rare thing, I guess you could say, letting a deer make. I mean, around here it is. Deer don't make it 7
They
years.
don't mess
around
it
here.
past 2 here.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just a big bodied deer, and you knew he kind of run. And you can tell the difference. Like that first 8 point we watched that evening that came out like 7 or 8 times. He was a younger deer. He's chasing does around. He's just kind of trying to mark his territory. Being young bull. And then you got old bull. He just walks right out to the corn. This is my spot. Everybody gonna leave me alone.
Another thing too is they knew that ground. They had that ground blind. It was brushed in real good. I mean, even me walking there was like, man, they've got this thing perfectly hid. But those deer knew where the ground blind was, and they kept looking, but they didn't spook. Here at home, a lot of times, if they see a ground blind, they'd be like, oh, just go on somewhere else.
Yeah.
But they kept coming back, and so it was amazing.
Yeah,
really,
I mean
it was.
he came out and had a different mannerism than that 8 point. I mean, he walked out and knew this is my territory.
Yeah.
This is me. But
those guys, they did a good, or Brett, I guess, especially, but all
both
of them, even Dylan, and man, you couldn't ask for a better host. And
I'm sitting there the whole time like, because we were nervous, you know.
Our deer trip was like their turkey trip.
Yeah.
Really, I think it was.
Oh, absolutely. You know, which they're coming back. They're coming back to turkey hunt. I don't know if we can set the bar that high again, but
Yes.
it's going to be tough.
Well,
to beat.
it sounds like they definitely repaid us from for the turkey
For
trip.
sure. And Brett said that. And I didn't ask him. I didn't want to push the envelope. You know, he invited me up here to deer hunt, and I was like, all right, this is cool. And he's like, man, y'all can come back. And I was like,
Yeah.
I was like, I hope so. Really? Sure.
Next week, you mean?
I was like, you sure? And I was like, man, you done put Richard Ramsey on a big old deer. You know, last year you came down turkey hunting. Richard Ramsey went and got his out the way before he took anybody along with him. He might be a little bit more iffy to take you with him this time.
There you go.
Well, I had that place that I couldn't take
people
anybody,
with
so
you.
I had to go by myself.
But nah, they're coming back down. I think Cody's coming with him. I'm not really sure. But
He should. As mad as he was last year about not coming.
watch Cody will come. We'll kill like one.
Yeah, it'll be the worst season we ever had.
Hope y'all not.
Nah, because we got Rich on the team now.
Oh yeah.
If we don't have birds, at least we know he will.
Somewhere, hopefully.
He's always got them.
No, it's
We better stop because we're going to jinx the whole daggone season.
it was a highlight trip, man. That deer trip, being the first one I've ever took, being able to take him for the first time, going on a trip together. Like I said, deer hunting goes back to my roots with him. I mean that, and I know we'd usually halfway through, you know, hunting geese, and it's like half the squad kind of breaks off, starts deer hunting, and Garrett don't deer hunt, so he's like, I wish y'all get back out here and let's kill some geese. And I'm just like, well, man, this is my roots. And I mean, really, that's me and him talk more deer in the woods than we do anywhere, and that's sad to say that, but I mean that's how it is usually. So I grew up Saturday, and he's in the woods.
Yeah.
You know, there ain't no question about it. That's what he's doing on Saturday, so that's what I do now, and I enjoy being able to not only see it and go deer hunting out there for the first time, but to see his face. I mean, that first day after he watched Old School and let him go, you know, he got back into side by side, and, you know, Sud and everybody's there, and he's just like, that was the best hunt I ever been on in my life. Well, he was, you know, he got that head bobbing. He's like, that's the best hunt I ever been on. Boy, there's deer everywhere.
Yeah, it was. It was like.
Meanwhile, I'm over there going, can we go now? Freezing.
You always say that, you know.
Okay, so compared to last year in Oklahoma, first day, windy business, was it that cold?
No.
Because that's probably
that was cold.
That's one of the coldest I've ever been in my life.
He got back in
there.
the truck. That's that kind of cold. No, that was. But the difference in, you know, windy business and deer hunting, it ain't cold
There's
when
a
you
big
go
difference
in.
when you're sitting still.
It ain't cold walking in. Especially anybody knows Brett. He's like the all-star, you know, pro football player, little dude.
Yeah.
We get out side by side. He's like, yeah, it's right up here. It ain't far. Man, we walk like 400 yards, and my man is hot stepping in. I'm like, you got to slow down, dude. I'm going to pass out. I can't do this like you. So when we got up there, once you start sweating or whatever because you got so much gear on, then you sit still.
Yeah.
After about 20, 30 minutes of sitting still.
And the worst is if you started sweating
Yeah.
on your way in.
Well, I was
and then
trying
you
to keep
cool
up
off.
with Brett. He was running.
That's what kills you.
Yeah.
So, and it was mainly our feet that got cold. I mean, you wearing muck boots or
Well,
whatever.
that's what happens. My feet will sweat.
Yep.
And then when you cool off, feet are done.
Matter of fact, I remember telling him at the hotel that night, I was like, I had 2 pairs of socks on because it was cold. And I was like, I ain't trying to chance it. I'm wearing muck boots because I don't know what kind of terrain we got to walk through. So I put 2 pairs of socks on. I think that's where I messed up.
Yeah.
It was too hot in there, and they started sweating, and that's when it got cold.
Yeah.
That's really the worst part. I mean, I was cuddling with Brett in the stand, so we were warm, but my feet were freezing. But I remember he got that head bob. He's like, that's the best hunt I ever been on right there. He's like, that's good.
You always say that, you know, even like turkey hunting or deer hunting, and it's like I just shot a nice 7-point before we left
Right
to go up there
before
that
we left.
same week because I said I don't want to go up there and be real trigger happy.
Yeah.
And this was one
Knock
he was
the
like
edge
18
off.
inches wide. It's real nice buck here, and so I was kind of calm, but it was the woods are different and
Different
I mean,
environment.
we were hosted basically like, hey, you just go right here. You walk into a ground blind, it's already set up for you.
Buddy.
You drive
Oh,
right up to
well,
it.
he had the buddy.
You get out of the side by side and walk in, and you're done. I'm like, man, this is like
It's
uptown.
all right there.
Man, it's spoiled.
Yeah,
And I mean, like I said, Brett and Dylan.
Those dudes been spoiling us for a long time now.
For a long time, and they put a lot of work in. And like I said, he held on to it. I think that's that mountain where you killed Old School. I think he only hunted it one time prior to us coming. And I mean, You know how that is. I mean, I remember the very first time I went up there and I met these guys. Remember the whole story with letting me shoot my widgeon?
Yeah.
And you go across the country and you got people that do the same thing you do. Back home, I don't know of too many people back here that would have huge bucks walking around on camera and just be like, man, I'll save it for you.
Yeah.
You don't get that.
Different world.
Different world.
I wouldn't necessarily put that on the person as I would just different territory.
Different territory, but still, Brett and them held on to what he could have been hunting.
Yeah.
He could have let his wife kill. He could have let, his buddy go kill.
Sure.
And he held on to all that. So, I mean, he's definitely the all-star. And I felt bad for the dude because his fiance actually they had left and gone out of town. So his animals were at home. And so he had to drive like an hour back and forth from his house every morning. And we were going to do one of these podcasts there with them. I told him, like, hey, we're going to do a podcast over there. It'd be good, especially, right after one of us kill a deer. That'd be the hype time to do it.
Yeah.
But I felt bad for him because, I mean, you could tell he was worn out. And we've hunted with Brett a long time, and he don't get worn out much, but he was worn out. Like, you could tell he was like, man, I'm miserable.
Yeah.
He's getting up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, driving an hour to meet us.
And then he took your deer, took it to the place.
Oh.
Yeah, he did all of that.
You ain't got to skin deer.
Yeah.
You talk about luxury. We're used to killing. Like, he's passed many a deer because he's like, I just didn't feel like skinning the dumb thing. We didn't skin nothing. We killed the deer, both deer, and take them to
slaughterhouse.
They pretty much have a slaughterhouse. They have a place that skins out deer, and it's where they process the meat and stuff too.
Yeah.
But they'll go ahead and skin it. You pay them to skin it or whatever.
You just take them the whole
drop
thing.
the whole thing, and I think Brett gutted it first. He said it's an extra charge if they have to gut it, but you gut it first and just take them the rest of it.
He did all that, and he was still already tired and burned out, and he still
went out of his way to
help us
to do everything. But so we get to this place, and you open this big freezer door, and there's just a pile of huge bucks laying
It's
there.
a lovely room of death.
We're just like, good Lord. Well, then the funny part was Cody had met us that last day. He came out there and met up with us before we left, and he went to the meat place with us. And we're sitting there, and this little Hispanic kid comes around the corner. And he's got a full-on apron on. He's got his knives on his side. Yeah. You can tell he's in there working. We come out there, and he's sitting there sharpening this knife, big old huge. And he's walking right up behind Cody, and Cody's like, hey, get away from me with that. And starts like trying to get away from this kid. Well, I guess his dad was the owner or somebody that worked there or whatever. And he come out
5 years
talking.
old.
Yeah, 5-year-old kid.
Five.
Skinning
Oh, you
deer.
said little.
Skinning deer.
I'm thinking 5. That's
5
Waylon.
Yeah. And he's skinning deer by himself. And he's out there just sharpening a knife. Yeah, show him how you not sharpen your knife, son. Blah,
I
blah,
won't
blah.
let Waylon open an Amazon package.
Oh, you should have been there. We were cringing because the kid's holding this knife sharpener, and this guy, what do you call that? I can't think of the terminology. Stop for the handle or whatever. Somebody will holler at me later for that one.
Finger saver, maybe.
Finger saver, not for his kid. But he's sitting there sharpening this knife toward him. And as he's doing it, he hits the guard 2 or 3 times right where his hands are.
Oh, Lord.
Big old, and he ain't going slow. And we're all just like, oh.
His dad, I guess it was his dad. He's like, oh yeah, he cut himself one time. Had to get 7 stitches in there. I said he
scared me more than him. Yeah. I was like, well, I don't see why. But yeah, we did that.
I don't think it fazed him.
No, it didn't faze him at all. He was he said he skins deer, maybe hogs, something else.
Yeah,
he skinned a couple of different animals by himself. But and then we went to the taxidermist, and I'll get on a taxidermy bench for a little bit here. So you know how it is with taxidermists. It's your pride of your animal. You want to make sure whoever you're taking it to is going to do a good job.
Sure.
I'm halfway across the country. I don't know these taxidermists from Adam, and around here it's.
When you just kill probably the nicest buck you've ever killed, you want to make sure
seen.
it's going to be spot on.
I want it to be mint. So I'm kind of like nervous about the taxidermy because we're going to take it there and have it done there. So we drive, and this goes back to our first year in Oklahoma. Like, we're driving down these long dirt roads in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And he's like, man, it's country out here. I was like, yeah, this is the highway.
You should see West Oklahoma.
Oh, yeah. But and then out of nowhere, you're just riding down through these fields, and all of a sudden, boom, there's this little building. A small little building, little trailer on the front of it. All right, cool. Pull up in there, and I'm nervous. I'm like, man, I'm about to drop this biggest deer I've ever seen. I hope this is a good taxidermist. Walk in. Beautiful animals all around. You can tell they do a lot of work.
Oh, I'm sure.
A lot of work. And I'll actually give them a little drop here. It's Wicked Ridge Taxidermy. Wicked Ridge. And I'll tell you, one thing eased my mind a lot is I've talked to a lot of taxidermists here, and for the most part, I mean, they're usually friendly, but it's like, you know, you can tell they're busy. You know, they got things to do. They're just like, all right, give me your information. Let's get it down, blah, blah. And it doesn't feel like a personal experience.
Yeah.
These guys, man, they stopped what they were doing for the most part, talked to me, talked to him, you know, asking us, where are you from, blah, 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 talk about football teams and all this other stuff. And it was cool that they actually took the time to stop. I mean, they got 40 deer on the floor they're trying to do.
Sure.
But they took the time to stop and actually have a conversation and explain, you know, we looked at the magazine like, you want this, you want that. Yeah.
It took us back to the freezer area back, and they said, this is just this week's kill.
Oh, God.
Just kind of gave us a tour.
They dropped some deer in Oklahoma that day.
Yeah.
Which it was opening day of gun season. So, I mean, it was like perfect time, and we had that cold front come in. But I'm excited to see what it's going to look like. I know some of the stuff here on the wall looked great, and just a personal experience, man. That says a lot.
That's awesome.
So, Bojangles hitting again. Phew. What'd you think?
Well, that's cool, man.
Would you want to go back?
Absolutely.
I'm glad y'all were able to make that happen. I know I said it a bunch for y'all leading up. I said, I'm glad y'all are getting out and getting to do this. And
you kept saying Richard's not even excited about going. He's like, he's just.
No, because I know how you are.
We just know you, and I know that they live off of that hype, and I didn't want you to get there and be like, you ready to kill some deer? I reckon. You know, because that hype is what sells it, and that's what really, you know, I mean, when they're down here, we were hyped up, you know, getting turkeys
I mean,
and stuff.
it's the same thing. Yeah, when you flip it around, you think about when they were down here last year, the best part is watching their reaction.
How excited they get when they see the turkeys.
I think about when you took Brett and Tim, and my favorite clip of the whole thing is when after Brett finally shot his the second one, and they jump up and they're just freaking out. Like, that is the best part of the whole thing. Like, yeah, I mean, that's what makes it awesome. And, you know, as much as we enjoyed that, they want to see that from y'all. From us. You know, like,
and I was just scared to death Richard's gonna be. Yeah, I reckon. You know, I'm good. He got super excited after the first hunt with that bobbing head. You know, that's the best hunt I've ever been on. He got super excited about that pork chop.
Yeah, that was
that was probably the highlight of his trip, was that pork chop.
Pork chop.
I'm gonna have to remember the pork chop.
It was the hunt. It was the hunt.
But he was all about it.
Well, we'll be out there in a couple months.
Couple weeks.
Well, it's more than a couple weeks.
5 weeks.
We just got to December.
Yeah, 5 weeks, right?
It's probably like 6-7 weeks.
Whatever.
But anyways, we're going to be out there.
I'm not going.
We're going to be out there in a little while, so.
Yeah, it'll be a little colder when we go this time.
Maybe I'll get to find out what that pork chop's about. I'll send you a picture of it.
Just bring me one back.
Say, mail it to him.
There you go.
But.
Well, cool deals. I think we done about ran through this whole jewel, so we'll probably just go ahead and wrap this thing up. I knew y'all had been on this trip, and I knew there was some good, exciting details about it, and I told Nate, I think the first time I saw you, I said, how'd your trip go? And I was like, you know what? Don't tell me too much, because I want to hear it for the first time on the podcast. Same thing with you. I've seen you a couple times, and I ain't even went up and talked to you because I know what we're going to talk about if I do. So glad we was able to get you in on here to share the story. Now that you've done one, broke the ice, come turkey season, we're going to do it again.
Hour went by pretty quick when you get to talking about things you like doing.
Yeah. It was a fast hour, huh?
Has it been an hour?
It's been an hour and 3 minutes.
Oh, okay.
So.
All right, then.
All right.
You want to sign us off?
Yeah. I don't know how you sign off.
Well, I know one thing that we've gotten bad about that I want to start doing again. We're doing our plugs. So, like I said, we're doing video now. These are going to go up on YouTube. We're going to do some shorter clips that'll go on our social media. You can check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever. We're Snapchats. We're everywhere.
Pretty much all the way around.
You search 910 Outdoors, you'll pretty much find us. Or you can even hit up the website 910outdoors.com. Give us a like, give us a follow, give us a subscribe, give us a comment, talk to us. We'll talk to you. We'll all be friends.
I'm gonna drop a dime too.
Let's hear it.
Old school's on camera.
Old school's on camera. There's something that Nate's been wanting to do for a long time, and
not only that, you need to like put that kill shot when he drops
Well, we gotta have the kill shot.
Yeah, I mean, he folds up when I shoot.
Yeah,
so.
we
they're
go-
gonna see because we're gonna hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. There is something in the works.
There might be some deer hunting footage in the near future. So stay tuned. We'll catch you on the next one, fellas. Appreciate it. And ladies, I guess. Whatever. Everybody, whoever's listening, whoever's watching, we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye.